Welcome to another impactful edition of the Public Service Knowledge of Learning series. In this session, we explore a topic central to effective governance and service delivery, public procurement process, your involvement as a stakeholder. Public procurement is more than just contracts and bidding. It is the mechanism through which government policies are executed, resources are managed, and value is delivered to citizens. For every public servant, whether you work in administration, finance, technical department, planning, or general service department, understanding your role in the procurement cycle is essential. And to guide us through this important conversation, we are honored to welcome a seasoned expert in the field, Mr. Subair Akintunde. Mr. Subair Akintunde is the Deputy Director Procurement and the head of the procurement department at the Lagos State Public Procurement Agency, Nigeria. He had over a decade of work experience in private sector before joining the public service as drainage engineer at Lagos State Ministry of Environment in year 2000. His duty in the Ministry of Environment were majorly the procurement and management of drainage infrastructural projects for over 11 years. This encouraged him to convert to the procurement cadre at the introduction of the procurement cadre in the year 2012. He has since risen to the post of Head Monitoring Enforcement and Compliance Department 2015-2023 and Head Procurement Department 2023 to date in the Lagos State Public Procurement Agency, the regulatory agency for the implementation of public procurement process in the state. He is the pioneer head of the Monitoring Enforcement and Compliance Department. He holds a Master of Science degree in Procurement Management from University of Lagos, a Bachelor of Technology BTech degree in Project Management from Federal University of Technology, Imo State in 1989. Advanced Diploma in Safety and Environmental Management from Obafemi Awolowo University in 2000. He had secondary school education at Federal Government College, Port Harcourt, Rivers State, where he obtained his WAEC certificate in 1984. And primary education at Benaka State Primary School, first living certificate in 1979. His trajectory in the public service of Lagos State is as follows. Drainage engineer, Office of the Drainage, Ministry of Environment, 2000-2011. Planning officer, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, 2011-2012. Procurement officer, Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, 2012-2015. Head of MEC Department, Lagos State Public Procurement Agency, 2015-2023. Head of Procurement Department, Lagos State Public Procurement Agency, 2020 to date. His professional certificates include the following. Member, Project Management Institution, PMI, United States of America, 2005. Member, Charter Institute of Purchasing and Supply, CIPS, United Kingdom, 2014. Chartered member, Charter Institute of Purchasing and Supply Management of Nigeria, CIPSMN, Nigeria, 2018. Chartered member, Institute of Supply Management and Public Procurement Professional Association of India. Certificate of Participation Training on World Bank Procurement Framework in 2024. He has attended several training workshops and seminars on public procurement organized by development partner, including the DFID, SPARC, World Bank, SPARC World Bank, Bureau of Public Procurement, BPP, Rule of Law and Anti-Corruption, RULAC, European Union Program, among others. Some of his major assignments in the agency include state focal person on EGP with BPP Abuja 2015, member of NGL, evaluating for Kaduna EGP for SAAS 2019-2020. Team lead for procurement process review and capital project monitoring. Head of implementation team for Lagos State Public e-procurement platform. Review of procuring entity, request for approval instrument. Facilitator for in-house capacity building program. Facilitator for change management and sensitization of stakeholders. Member of organizing team for change management roundtable program. He is happily married with children, and he enjoys playing chess, reading, discussion, and reading poetry. So, ladies and gentlemen, so we welcome Mr. Please join me in warmly welcome our facilitator, Mr. Subair Akintunde Moruf. You are welcome, sir. I will slide the share. Let me share your slide. So you have the floor, sir. If you are seeing my slide. You can unmute yourself, sir. Okay, let me unmute you. Sorry. Unmute yourself now, sir. If you hear me. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir. Can you see my?
Am I
can you see
audible
this?
now? Good evening.
Yes, you are, sir. Good evening, sir.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Directors here present, permanent secretaries here present, members of the Knowledge Hub of the Lagos State Public Service. It's a pleasure for me and a great honor to be here with you to share information on procurement, public procurement. I know that on the slide, on the group, we have quite a number of us who are either procurement officers or well-versed and knowledgeable persons in procurement. I see that my able director, DG, is on the call as well. Mr. Fatah on the call. So we'll want to quickly, within the time allowed for us, to look at public procurement, our involvement as stakeholders, our involvement as stakeholders. That's what we're here to do today. Can I have the next slide, please? So the next slide, we're looking at the items or the areas we intend to touch on. We would want to understand the key stages of public procurement process. This is something I'm sure all of us must have heard at one time or another, but we want to remind us of what public procurement process is all about in the system in Lagos State. We want to identify the various stakeholders in that process and also look at their roles. We want to explore how these stakeholders can engage effectively to ensure that the process is run properly. But we can't do this without understanding the roles of the different stakeholders in the process. Then we'll also round up by looking at the challenges that we encounter in running the process, and I will try to briefly suggest ways out, strategies for implementation, so that we can have smooth sail in the process. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so briefly, we want to look at public procurement. Like I said, I'm sure a lot of us must have at one time or another attended programs or read what we mean by public procurement. In a nutshell, we said that public procurement is the professional of works and services by public entities while applying public funds to meet their ministerial responsibilities and assignments to the citizens. The key words here are to say that each time any ministry, department, and agencies of government, in line with their meeting of their obligations to the citizens, carrying out their responsibilities, what we call ministerial assignment and responsibilities, along that line, we do encounter the need to acquire goods, to acquire works, and to acquire services in carrying out our work. What are goods, works, and services? Goods, like we know, are tangible, movable items that we use when we want to acquire, when we want to implement our responsibilities. And this covers from little items like biros, stationaries, chairs, ICT equipment like laptops and all that, even as far as heavy-duty equipment, even as far as planes. So if, say, the office of HOS, the HOS office wants to procure a plane or a chopper for the HOS, it is still will be done through the processes for the acquisition of goods. Once it is a tangible item that is movable, that comes under goods acquisition. For works, we are looking at hard items that when you put them in place, they would basically remain where they are. They are physical, they are touchable, but they are mainly not movable. And I give examples. If you put up a new block, like we are putting up the new block for the HOS and the cafeteria and the staff canteen that is going on in the secretariat now, that is a works project. So it has gone through to be implemented. The third set, services. We can further break the services into two. The consulting services and non-consulting services. And briefly to distinguish them, we say that consulting services are those services that are mainly intellectual based. So you want someone to deliver lectures for you. You want someone to look at your finances, an accounting firm to look at your finances. These are services. You want an engineering firm to carry out a study for you on an assignment, say drainage alignment study and all that. These are services. The differences between the services, that's intellectual services, and the non-intellectual services is the fact that for the non-intellectual service, or what we call non-consulting services, they mainly be a security service provider or a janitorial service provider. You will agree with me that it's not as intellectual as the case of an engineering survey or the delivery of a major review for you. So we have the consulting services and non-consulting services. So these are the broad spectrum of procurement activities that we have. So in carrying out our ministerial responsibilities, if we need to acquire goods, works, and services and apply public funds, we would be carrying out a public procurement process. It is essential for us to note here that when we say public funds, we are not limited to only the appropriated funds, what you have in your budget. This covers grants and other loans, grants, and other sources of funds that we use or that we apply in the running of our day-to-day activities in our various ministries. Once entity. Procuring entity means the ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Once we go out to acquire goods, works, and services, by applying public funds, we are carrying out public procurement process. So in rounding, we can say that public procurement is no longer a routine administrative duty. There's a structured process that is implemented by trained personnel and based on sets of core values, laws, and procedures, principles, and practices aimed at achieving predetermined objectives. What it means is that, yes, we will be stakeholders in the process, but this procurement process are best run by officers, procurement cadre officers that have been trained to do the clear and concise assignments that are required to run a public procurement process. So some of the key values and principles of public procurement process is to say that, first of all, and most importantly, we carry out public procurement to ensure that we achieve value for money. So much so that some of us even coin value for money as another name for procurement. What it means is that for every kobo, every naira, every million that the state government spends, we want to get the best value for that money. That's what a value for money is all about. And to achieve this, we believe that public procurement processes will ensure accountability, which means that all you do, all the money you spend, all the funds you apply must be well accounted for. You would also ensure that there's inclusiveness. If we look back to pre-public procurement days, before the procurement law was initiated and passed into law in the state, one of the concerns of the is to inclusive process in our spending of public funds. If we recall, for those of us who were around at that time, the STB days, when we go to STB to apply for the award of contracts, most times we just, extend the window to 2 or 3, maximum 3 companies most times, without taking into consideration that we may actually have a lot more persons, a lot more firms that can deliver on this item for us. But with the coming of public procurement, we have thresholds, we have segments that would, when necessary, allow us to go through what we call open competitive bidding process that would ensure that service providers, wherever you are, whether it is within Nigeria or outside Nigeria, in the case of ICB, can partake in opportunities to provide the goods, works, and services that our MDAs need. That's what public procurement has come to ensure via the inclusiveness that we talk about. Then we talk about transparency. Of course, everything we do in public procurement is transparent. We have all our records. In fact, right now, all the awards of the state are available on our website. When we carry out our open competitive bids and everything we do, they are all available to all and sundry on our website, on the website of MDAs, and every other available fora or media that everyone can get to see. Economy. The essential part of economy in public procurement is to say that we ensure that we are not using 100 naira to chase 10 naira. And that basically is why for low threshold expenditure, we sometimes allow what we call selective tendering. Even some cases where we don't need to go via a more expensive route of, public opening, publicity, opening processes and all that. But all in all, everything we do, there's accountability and all that in what we do. So to the right, you see the ethics of public procurement. When we carry out, we ensure integrity. There is high moral in what we do. We maintain principles and honesty in everything we do, and ensure that what we do is right. Right to you, right to the service providers, right to the state government, and right to every other stakeholder. There's fairness, there's responsibility, and we look out for choice in what we are doing, there's honor and value in what we do. So these are the ethics of public procurement that we try to ensure by carrying out public procurement processes. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right. So this is a graphic slide. So to your left, you see a ball that briefly tells you what we go around to do, the whole public procurement cycle. We're going to deal with these sectors or sections later in the presentation, but enough for us to know that we start by planning. Like they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So for everything we do in public procurement process, planning is very, very essential. You must plan your activities, plan what you want to do, and then we'll talk about the planning stage and the segments involved in planning later on. After planning, you do request documentation, you approach the market, that is open up and send in your bidding documents to service providers. The service providers will respond to you, to your bids, and then suited contractor or service provider, what we call the most responsive evaluated bidder. There's some other terms that we use now beyond just most responsive evaluated bidder. Sometimes we talk about meat and we talk about every other thing. Now we are looking at even sustainability, ethical procurement in picking the contractor or the service providers that we choose. After picking that, when necessary, you carry out negotiation. If you don't have to do that, you go on, you do contract startup, contract management, contract close-up. The last segment there is disposal. It's important for us to note that disposal is a key segment or is a key part of public procurement. Prior to the promulgation of or the signing into law of the procurement law, we used to have boarding and all that. All this, and then we had what do you call it then? There's a board you talk about then that when you go into boarding of items and all that. But now, the disposal of every government article or items will go through proper public procurement process. There is a detailed disposal document that has been prepared by the Public Procurement Agency to ensure that this is done properly. So in picking the appropriate service provider for our services and for the expenditure that we are incurring, we have to go through this set of activities. It's also important to note the hierarchical placement of our rules in public procurement process. At the peak of it, we have the public procurement law. That's the law that guides all our activities in public procurement. The public procurement law signed, the one that is effective now is the public procurement law of 20. We have manuals and guidelines. And from time to time, the agency also prepares costs to have our HOS circulars to clarify issues on public procurement, on what we need to do and every other thing. Beyond the circulars, we ensure that what we do is best practice. And then we have interministerial directives from our accounting officers that also guide us on what we do. Next slide, please. So, to the key parts of this presentation now. Who is a stakeholder? Of course, like we know, stakeholder is just an English word, and from the dictionary we can say that the stakeholders in the procurement process are those individuals, groups, or organizations that have an interest in our procurement process. They can be affected by what we do, they can influence what we do, and they can affect the outcomes of what we do for our process. So a stakeholder in everything we do are those persons, stakeholders in everything we do, are those individuals or groups or organizations that have interest in what we are doing. So anyone that has interest in our procurement process is a stakeholder. in our procurement process. Anyone that can be affected by what we do in our procurement process is a stakeholder to our procurement process. Anyone that our procurement process will influence is a stakeholder to our procurement process. Anyone that the outcomes of our procurement process would affect are also stakeholders to our procurement process. So we can say that virtually everyone is a stakeholder to our process. For a procurement process for the rehabilitation of the Ogudu Bridge that is going on now, we are all stakeholders there. The implementation of this activity, of this bridge, the repair or rehabilitation of this bridge, will affect all the road users. So once the outcome of our procurement process will affect you, or you can affect it, you become a stakeholder. Once you have interest in what we're doing, you are also a stakeholder. Once you can influence what we do, you are a stakeholder. So I believe it's quite clear who stakeholders are. And then we should also note that we can have either internal stakeholders or external stakeholders. That means the stakeholders can be internal to our organizations, or they can be external to our organization, and then they play various roles in what we do. Briefly speaking, you can see there we've tried to highlight 9 different stakeholders to our procurement process. The government of the day is a key stakeholder to our procurement process because they give us directives, they can influence what we do. What we do affects the way the citizens view or perceive the government. So the government is a very important stakeholder. The government of the day is a very important stakeholder in our procurement process. Next to that, you have our various MDAs, that's the procuring entities. The various MDAs are what we refer to as procuring entities in our procurement process. Our various MDAs are another key stakeholders to our procurement process, followed by the procurement unit of our various MDAs. The procurement units of our various MDAs are the seats at which the various procurement assignments are carried out. So they also are an important stakeholder process. Other departments of the MDA. Again, we have the PPA as a regulatory body, and all the regulatory bodies as stakeholders to what we do. Another important set of stakeholders to our procurement process are the professional bodies like COREN, ICANN, and all CIPSMN, and every other professional body. They are key stakeholders to our procurement process. The service providers, these are our contractors, suppliers, and consultants that provide the goods and services that we need. They are an important stakeholder in our process. The civil organization, civil society organizations, and the media, they are important to our process. We'll get to see how all these stakeholders affect our processes and what we require from them and what they should also provide for the process. And then lastly, the citizens of the state, they, I think, are even the chief stakeholders to all we do, because everything we do is to provide governance to the citizens of the state. So in looking at all these 9 stakeholders, which we are going to be looking at, the slide has already moved to their responsibilities. So let's dive straight into that. The government of the day, they carry the mandate. Their responsibility in our procurement process is that they carry the mandate of what we do. They give us the procuring entities, that the ministries, agencies will define the needs and do policy implementation. The policy of the government of the state, government of the day, concerning agriculture and food security in the state will be implemented by the Ministry of Agri and Food Security. The government's policy on infrastructural renewal and all that will be implemented by the various ministries that are involved in that area. So these are our key stakeholders that will define the needs. The procurement entity will define the needs of the people in that area, and then they'll do policy implementation. The implementation of policy as has been let down by the government for us along the line. The responsibility of the procurement units, that's our various procurement units in the MDAs, is to do the planning, the management, and the execution of our procurement process. The planning, the management, and execution of our procurement process, along with the next set of stakeholders we have there, the user departments. And I'll take a bit of time to talk on these two set of stakeholders. Oftentimes, during the course of implementation of procurement process in the state, we have a lot of cross-cutting issues between the procurement unit and the user departments in the implementation or in the implementation of public procurement process in the state. And I give an example. If you want to buy, if you want to procure ICT equipment, for instance, laptops, printers, and all that for our various MDAs, the process will be run the procurement unit. They will plan it, they will manage it, they will execute the process in conjunction with the user department. The user department, that's in this time, will include the user department, and the technical team will include the team that is in need of that item. That's the user department. For instance, if you have to buy laptop for, say, accountants, you look at the best type in terms of configuration and order and specifications for that item, for that laptop, that will suit the activities of an accountant. The accountant may not need the exact specification of laptops like an engineer will do in the Ministry of Works, where he wants to run AutoCAD, Civil D softwares and all that. So the user will come up with his needs. The technical team, that's the ICT, will now polish up the specifications of these laptops that we want to procure. These specifications will be given to the procurement unit to run its process. So it is not the responsibility of the procurement unit solely and wholly on its own to prepare the specifications and all that. More so during services, procurement of consulting services, it is the responsibility of the user department, the department that is in need of that consulting service, to give us the terms of reference, knowing what you need, what you expect that consultant to achieve for you. It is for you to provide the technical input and other things for that consultant by way of providing the terms of reference for that consulting service. All these are the inputs that will come from the user department for the procurement unit to run it as is assignment. We'll look at this in details further down the line. Then, of course, we have regulatory authorities and is to regulate the activities and also carry out policy implementation. Professional bodies will ensure that professionalism is maintained and they have oversight functions on what we do. The civil society organizations and media, they are to ensure public awareness of what we are doing. They also carry out oversight functions, ensure that we have feedbacks, and then that transparency is maintained in all we do. The citizens will have feedbacks, they demand accountability from us and ensure that we do things right. The service providers, of course, they will provide, the service providers will respond to our solicitation documents, they will provide the goods, works, and services is the procurement unit and the user. Further down the line, we'll talk more on that to ensure that. Next slide. Thank you. So I want to take the involvement of the various stakeholders in our procurement process. We look at why stakeholders do their stakeholders. Is a form of stakeholders involvement or understand what we do. We do. We're looking at the advantage. We're looking at the advantages of stakeholder engagement and involvement of our why we must involve or why we should involve our stakeholders. And I was saying that carrying on our stakeholders will ensure that we improve transparency in the process and accountability, which will reduce corruption and wastage. When the other stakeholders understand their responsibilities along the procurement, it will enhance service delivery, reduce corruption and wastages both in terms of resources, time, and manpower, and manpower and all that. It will encourage fair competition, build public trust, and that will ensure that more inclusiveness is carried on in the process. And how do we get our stakeholders involved? Like what we're doing now, we participate in needs assessment forum and procurement planning. This is a very key part of our responsibility. One of the things we've discovered as a great challenge to procurement process is that when the procurement units of our various MDAs call for the procurement planning committee meetings, a lot of our colleagues should. So we end up having so I was saying that our stakeholders need to be involved in the process and know what your part in the process is all about. And I was giving an example of the procurement planning committee that we have in our various ministries and departments. When our procurement officers call for this meeting, a lot of our colleagues who are supposed to provide the information to put up the procurement plan don't show up. And even when they show up, they don't take it as their responsibility as it should. The procurement officer will not know the activities that you have in mind and the way you want it to be and the specifics that need to be represented in the procurement plan. So at the end of the day, you find out that when we get to the point of implementation, the departmental heads and the user department will start telling you, this is not what you want to do. This is the description of what we encounter these difficulties because we've all failed to play our part at the point of procurement plan preparation. If we all get involved, ab initio, we would ensure that what the procurement plan carries, that the procurement officer would follow during the year, will be what you want to do. So it is very, very important that we all get involved in the entire procurement process. When you're having bidding process for your department, be a part of it. When the documents are prepared, you can even request for a copy of the document to be extended to the procurement to the service providers from the procurement unit, so that you ensure that is actually communicating your needs to the service providers. So we should ensure that we play our part along the line. We should monitor our tender and ensure that the awards are done at the appropriate time. We have situations where the units in need of item will not even know when awards have been made. Talk of following up and ensuring that the service providers deliver as and at when due. So it is very important that all of us as stakeholders, like I said earlier, the user department and the procurement unit, who are the two key stakeholders we are looking at today, should ensure that they get involved in the entire procurement process. We should report irregularities when any occur, and then ensure that feedbacks are given on the service on the services that we are providing. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so this slide will quickly speak to what all of us or require all of us to understand about our procurement process. If we take our time to look at this slide and the next one that we'll look at, and you understand how our procurement process should flow, we will be home and dry on delivery of procurement processes in our various MDAs. The blue round button at the top left corner is the start point where the procurement unit of your MDAs will commence their activities. And what do? You prepare the procurement plan, which is the first rectangle you see there, the brown rectangle. The first thing you do is to prepare the procurement plan. And that's where I said all of us must be involved. All departmental heads, all user departments must be involved in. Now, have taken place or should take place before the preparation of a procurement plan, and that is the needs assessment. Our colleagues in the MEPB will really be the ones to carry out this, or the various departments. You know how to come up with your needs. It is your needs after the needs assessment job that will be fed into the procurement plan. A lot of times we get questions as to which one leads to the other. The needs assessment of the citizens as will be carried out by the procurement, by the MEPB, or the preparation of the procurement plan. The procurement plan is based on the needs assessment of the citizens. So you would have carried out the needs assessment before you fit your needs into the procurement plan. This first procurement plan, we say, is a draft procurement plan. After that, we go for budget process and budget approvals. Once that is done, move on to the so after to the next stage, which is the clearance of your procurement plan with the procurement agency. We usually hold our procurement plan clinic at the beginning of the year, most times in the first month of the year in January, to clear the procurement plan as has been prepared by your various procurement units. Once your procurement plan is done, we'll check for VOCs and ensure that there's fund for your procurement when you want to carry it out. The arrow taking you back up is to say that you don't have VOCs for any activities. You can't progress beyond that point. You go back to budget approval and ensure that there is budget provision, there's funds for it. Either you have it in the appropriation or you go for AIE. Once you get funds for your assignment, then you can go on to the next stage, which is the initiation of the memo to carry out procurement process by the user department. This memo will go to the accounting officer for his own actions. The accounting officer, once you are through, that means ensuring that that's what you want to do at that time. The next stage is to conduct your MTB or the PTB meeting for the process. And then you sometimes need to obtain clearance from the agency, the PPA, for the assignment you want to do. There can be some back and forth at that point when you take your proposal in terms of your bidding document containing the drawings and everything to the agency for approval. Sometimes the agency may ask you to carry out amendments to your assignment or to the document as prepared by your entity before you go on. But once you are clear, then the PO will issue. The PO and the user department will develop the procurement document to the user, to the service providers for them to respond to. After that, we'll prepare our bids and issue it out, carry out evaluation, and then go on to every other thing that we need to do. So for want of time, I think we can look at all this to ensure. But it is important for us to note that the broken lines from the governor's end, the governor's approval end, is to say that there could be times when we carry out what we say is approval before process or process before approval. Both lines or both processes are acceptable. So we are saying that you can carry out the entire process in terms of evaluate, do your bidding and evaluate the documents from your bidders to your preferred bidder before you go for governor's approval. That's why you have process before approval. Sometimes you can have approval before process, where you have approval of the governor as to what you want to do before you carry out your procurement process. If you want of time, I want to quickly go on and look at all the things. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so is where we want to begin to look at the essence of this presentation. At the planning stage, like initially when we saw a board where we looked at the stages of procurement, the first stage of procurement is the planning stage. The activities we carry out there, the first one is needs assessment. The needs assessment will be done by all departments and units of the procuring entity. Everyone is involved in the needs assessment stage. Don't leave it to only the procurement unit to carry out the needs assessment for us. Of course, the needs of everyone. The next thing we do under the planning stage is the actual planning and budgeting. Under that, we say that all departments, units are involved in the procurement planning process. That's the preparation of the procurement plan for the entity. The user departments are to provide the BEME, the bill of engineering measurement and evaluation. Sometimes we call it the bill of quantity for our works, and also the terms of reference or specifications for our consultancy assignments and supply of goods assignments. So we are all involved. The obtaining of sign-off for the assignment is not the responsibility of the procurement unit. It is the responsibility of the user department. So before you push your documents to the procurement unit to carry out your procurement activity or process for you, as a user department, ensure that you have your bill of quantity or BOQ, and ensure that you have your terms of reference, ensure that you have your specifications for the item you want to procure, and ensure that you obtain appropriate sign-off where necessary. And also, the planner or the PRS department will ensure the availability of funds. But like I said earlier, a lot of all these assignments are just left up for the procuring units to carry out. And because it is not their typical responsibility, they may falter or they may delay in getting all these things done. It is important that we all note that the planning stage, which involves the needs assessment, the planning and budgeting stage involves every other person, all other stakeholders, at least specifically the procurement unit and the user department and the subject matter experts in the various MDs. The next stage of the procurement process is the contract formation stage. The first thing we do in the contract formation stage is the request for documentation. The procurement unit will prepare bids and documents with the input of the user department. Like you said earlier, the procurement unit will not be able to prepare the appropriate procurement document without the input from the user department. And then the procurement unit will also obtain necessary approvals from the regulatory agency, that's the Public Procurement Agency, for our assignment. After all this is done, we can move on to the advertisement stage and then the tendering stage. At the advertisement stage, the procurement unit of your entity will extend the solicitation document to the market, that's to our service providers. A lot of times in conjunction with the public affairs units of our agency. So you don't leave all this. When we are going through the open competitive bidding, you don't leave the extension to just the procurement department. Sometimes even as much as putting it on our various websites and all that will involve the ICT department of your MDA. So the extension of the solicitation documents will not or should not be left to the procuring unit alone. That's the PU. And at the point of tender harvest, when the returns are made, when the service providers return their bids, you would also involve the other departments. If you have an open competitive bidding process where you have a bid opening session, it is a program, it is an event that will involve everyone. The user departments will be there, the management team of the procuring entity will be there, the other stakeholders such as the civil will be there, and a couple of other things. So you see that as you go down the line, the activities involved in procurement process are not solely the responsibility of the procurement unit alone. So if your procurement process fails, it is not the procurement unit alone that fails. We all fail along with the procurement unit. And I'm sure that if we all play our part in the various stages of the procurement process, the procurement process would have a higher chance or higher rate of success, and we'll all be successful in what we're doing. Next slide, please. Next slide. The next point in the procurement process is the bid evaluation stage. After our service providers would have returned their bids, and the first thing you do there is the evaluation of the document sending. At this point, the evaluation committee for our various MDAs can either be a 3-man committee or a 5-man committee. For open competitive processes, we'll be having a 5-man evaluation committee that will consist of the procurement unit, a representative of the procurement unit, usually the head of the procurement unit. You will have the department in need of that assignment, that's the user department, as a second person there. You'll also have the technical experts, and I'll explain who the technical expert is. For instance, if you want to procure ICT equipment for the, say, the admin department, you want to procure printers, photocopying machines, and all that for the admin department of the agency. The user department is the admin department. They know how much photocopying they do on the system and have an idea of the type of system they want to buy. But the ICT will be the subject matter expert that will advise on the specifications that is appropriate for your need. So you'll have the user department, the subject matter expert, and the procurement unit in the evaluation team. These are the 3-man evaluation team for evaluation of processes that are not open competitive bids. That's when we do what we call selective tendering process or the national shopping process. But beyond that, if you have open competitive bidding process, the evaluation committee will now include 2 more persons. These 2 persons are a representative of the accounting function that could be either from the audit department or for the accounts department or the F&A department. The other person that will join is a representative of the legal team. The reason for this is not far-fetched, because when we carry out open competitive bids, the documents that we'll need to evaluate will contain documents that can only be properly interpreted and evaluated by our legal team in terms of the CAC document and the authenticity of these documents that have to do with the legality of the firms involved. Also, you know that they will present during open competitive bid documents that have to do with the financials of the firm, the tax situations of the firm, their annual tax. Documents would only be better reviewed by a financial person. That's why we have these 2 other members joining in the evaluation where we carry out open competitive processes. So you see that the evaluation committee is a very critical, the job of the evaluation committee is a very critical assignment in the procurement process, and everyone that needs to be involved should take it as a sacrosanct duty to carry out their responsibility. The other committee there is the bid evaluation. The bid evaluation committee report will be sent to our ministerial tenders board or our parastatal tenders board for review and necessary approval. I need to state that the evaluation committee is a subcommittee of the tenders board. The activities of the tenders board in their report will be passed to the MTB, the ministerial tender. The evaluation committee's report will be passed to the tenders board for approval. It is only when this is done and you obtain the necessary approval of PPA that you can go on to do negotiation where necessary. And then the MTB of the procuring unit will obtain the PPA's approval for the process before the final stage, which is the contract award stage. At the contract award stage, the procurement unit will issue the notification of award to the successful service provider. The service providers will accept the award if they deem it so fit and carry out or make necessary payments. Then also we'll conclude documentation of our contract. It is important to hear that the completion of contract conduct is a very, very sacrosanct assignment. We have issues across board now with service providers who are carrying out activities, or even some completed the activities without having any document, any contract document with our MDAs. That means if anything goes wrong, the state fund may not be protected. The state's position on our contracts may not be protected. It is important that we ensure that we conclude the award process by ensuring that the contract documents are properly done with the Ministry of Justice, and everything is properly documented. For our selective tendering processes, where we don't, not even selective tendering processes, for our post-review assignments, that's assignments below 10 million, MDAs that have legal office are allowed to document and complete the contract signing with the service providers in your MDA. By the to ensure that when necessary, they liaise with the MOJ, the Ministry of Justice. But for any assignment, any award that is prior review, that is assignments from 10 million and above, we must ensure that we get the contract document completed by the Ministry of Justice. This is very important to note. So you see from what we've been saying so far, that procurement process involves a lot of hands on deck. It's not to be left to the procurement unit alone if we are serious about ensuring that our procurement process is properly done. Next slide, please. At the contract management stage, which is the next stage after the award, you do contract startup. The contract startup means that the service provider will have to obtain the advance payment guarantee or the advance payment bond as necessary. Of course, the difference between the two is that the advance payment guarantee is coming from banks, whilst the advance payment bond is coming from insurance firms, but they both serve the same purpose. So at the point of startup, ensure that the funds of the state is protected by ensuring that your service provider obtains the advance payment bond or advance payment guarantee as necessary when you award contracts. The accounts department of our MDAs will ensure the release of funds as necessary. And then for projects, capital projects from the appropriate threshold, I think from the HOS circular that the procurement agency issued about, I think it should be around 2022 or thereabout. We expect that for any capital project from 250 million, the project monitoring committee, the PMC, which will be a committee made up of critical members of your agency to ensure that our capital projects are carried on properly. And you don't leave the management of our capital projects to just one or a few hands. All hands must be on deck. We are all stakeholders in the success of our various procurement activities. Once the startup is through, you go through the contract implementation stage where you have continuous supervision by your procurement, your project management committee for capital projects. And if it is for supply of goods, the firm or the department and persons involved that will take maybe the store that will receive the goods into the store with the necessary documentation, the store receive voucher and all that should be properly. And then appropriate stage to release fund. Again, we should note that contract implementation is not left to maybe only the user department or only the procurement unit or the procurement unit and the user department. There are responsibilities for other sections, other departments of the agency or the procuring entity to ensure that we have proper delivery of our procurement processes. At the contract closeout stage, certifications will be done to ensure and document delivery of our goods and services, and then completion of work. Completion of work certificates will be done and signed and issued to our contractors as need be. Final payments will be done when the accounts prepare the vouchers as we need. And then, of course, like we said earlier, the disposal of items, which in itself is a full process, which is anti or procurement as it is. When you procure one or two things, procurement don't see disposal to mean destructive discarding of items. You can have other forms of disposal, like you can have trading, you can move your items to other departments that are in need of it, and a couple of other things that you can do. So good to note that disposal does not only mean destructive discarding of your items. The appropriate time should have time to dwell more on disposal. Next slide. So, in rounding up, we want to look at the challenges to what we've been talking about. That is ensuring proper procurement process. because it's all about delivery of governance to the citizens. One key bureaucratic, it is said that governance is all about bureaucracy, but we should ensure that we don't stretch it more than necessary. We should allow things to flow as and at when due, so that we ensure proper delivery of our services to the citizens of the state. We should ensure that there is access to information, because one of the challenges we have now is that a lot of us don't even know what we should do in line of procurement process, in the value chain line of procurement process. A lot of us are not aware of our responsibilities, where ours start and where some other person's own stop. Especially at points where we have cross-cutting issues, a lot of times we have bickerings and clashes between departments on who does what and who shouldn't do what. And this is not good enough for our procurement process. Another very big challenge is territorialism. A lot of us see that procurement officer is coming. Why is the procurement officer asking for the budget? Why is he asking for that? Why is he? You should understand that it's a collective responsibility. There should be no fear of dominance, that maybe if I give out my documents, this other person, this other department will outshine me and all that. These are challenges to implementing proper procurement process. We should all have an open mind to what we do and ensure that we carry on everyone along in what we do. We see also that the lack of awareness or training, which I believe what we are doing today, will go a long way in resolving. If we all know, if we all are aware of our responsibilities along the value chain line, we will know when to contribute our quota to the procurement process, and we will know what to do at the right time. Then there's also the issue of weak enforcement of regulations. I can tell you for free that the public procurement law, the PRS, and every other, the financial management documents and everything of the system are adequate to ensure that we run our procurement processes properly. But sometimes we don't have proper enforcement of our laws, of our regulations, and every other thing. Maybe if we begin to have proper enforcement of the laws and regulations of the state, it will go a long way in ensuring that our procurement processes are properly implemented. Next slide, please. Next slide. Right. So solutions and recommendations to get us out of the woods. We should be having continuous enlightenment and stakeholder engagement. Like I said earlier, as far as the agency is concerned, the Public Procurement Agency, what we are doing tonight is a very engagement activity. And the importance to the agency is underscored by the fact that our able Director General is on this platform, following up with what we do. The agency at every point takes as very important any opportunity to talk to our stakeholders, to enlighten us and ensure that we understand what procurement is all about and what procurement requires of all of us. Continuous enlightenment and stakeholder engagement will go a long way to resolve some of our problems in our procurement process. There should be strong enforcement of laws and oversight functions. When things are going wrong, those of us who are charged with the responsibility of flagging activities should ensure that we flag it. Even if it is procurement unit that is not doing things right, you should flag it. Call the procurement unit to the order. Verify any issue and other things. Continuous improvement of our activities that we do, continuous assessment of what we do so that we ensure continuous improvement in what we do. Feedback and grievance mechanism is very important. It is only in this part of the world that we feel that grievance mechanism is a negative thing. Grievance is a very, very important tool in management. Once if we don't manage grievances properly, then it will snowball into conflict, which is what is bad. Grievance management is not a negative thing in any society or in any organization. So we should ensure that we have proper grievance management mechanism to ensure that our procurement processes are well done. Open procurement data platforms should be encouraged, especially, for example, the OCDS, Open Contract Data Management System, that will ensure that everything we do is open. There is no secrecy. It is money for all of us. There is nothing like my file, my money. I don't want you to see it. Because it's to the citizens of the state, and nobody, no unit, no department can do it alone. We should ensure that there's openness and we carry all that need to be carried along in what we do. Capacity building, like we said earlier, and training is key to what we do. I think that's about all. Let's see the next slide. I think the recommendation and solution is the last thing. Oh, in conclusion, every one of us have a role to play in what we've been discussing all this while. Don't leave your procurement process to the accounting officer and the procurement unit alone. Don't leave the procurement planning committee to only the procurement unit and the accounting officer, or probably sometimes even the PRS or the all these key documents for all of us. The preparation of the procurement plan, the preparation of the budget, and every other document that is needed to ensure delivery of our ministerial responsibility is the responsibility of all of us. Effective procurement will mean better development outcomes for the society. Your voice matters in ensuring good governance. Nothing should be left to everyone. Stakeholders play a critical role in safeguarding public resources, and then we should also know that active participation enhances procurement integrity. Collective responsibility leads to better development of outcomes. Next slide. Thank you all for listening. It's been a pleasure going through this presentation for all of us. I hope that I've been able to impose one or two things concerning public. So we'll take questions and answers and every other thing as directed by the coordinator of the program or the host of the program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the this enlightenment and insightful season. Please, do you have any? If you have any question, please raise up your hand so that we can all participate to this. Maybe you are having any issue with your procurement officer in your MDs. So let's solve the problem here now, or what you don't understand. Please raise your hand. Any question? Oh, okay, Mr. Awe. Mr. Awe, you can unmute yourself, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
You are welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Engineer Subair. We appreciate you for this. It's been a very long presentation, and it was also really not boring, but very, very educative. It was a big classwork. I want to say this. I've been part of you in procurement for quite a while, but there are some new things that I'm seeing. I actually want to ask a question relating to the issue of selective tendering and people coming to bid for a project or contract, as it were. I want to ask, is there a kind of concession or a reason why selection may not be made for obvious reason or a kind of government policy? Let me give an example to this, that so that my question can be very clear. I know there was circular from the state government that says whatever kind of entrepreneurship or kind of company or contract or job or services that are run by state government MDAs or parastatal that are conditional part of it is that all MDAs must use those services of those MDAs. Example, the Lagos Printing Press and some other MDAs or parastatal like that. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying now. If there is any
Very well, sir.
job that
Very
needed
well.
to go for printing, maybe a very major one, then it involves a printing exercise, and companies from other area of our stakeholders are interested in this job. I want to ask, much as procurement is about allowing more people to come in to bid, and there is a state government um, opportunity for our MGAs that are doing the same kind of job and services. Do we need to do any of these this thing with all of those people, or we just give directly to any of the MDA or parastatal, as it were? That's the question I want to ask at this time now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Let me just quickly take this before I respond to this before we take the other question. I see a couple of other hands are up. Our question is a very germane one, and it's important, and it's good at this. What we have on ground, the circular of the government, of the state government, and I think is an HOS circular, prescription is that for assignments provided by some agencies of government, the first go-to is that agency of government. What this means is that, for instance, even for IOGC, Ibile Oil and Gas, all MDAs of the state government are supposed to patronize them for the supply of diesel and other petroleum products, except when you have challenges, either in capacity or in meeting up your timing for the supply, that we may allow you to go to other suppliers of the item. Ditto printing press, the Lagos State Printing Press. It is expected that MDAs of the state government will carry out their printing activities with the Lagos State Printing Press. So even if you come to PPA, that you want to carry out a process to procure diesel or any petroleum product, the agency will not approve that you go procure that item from any other person outside, except when it is clear to the agency that you have issues with Ibile in terms of them not meeting up your requirements. Or you say you want to print certain things, we can only allow you go to a printer at Bariga or Shomolu if the printing press, the Lagos State Printing Press, is not in a position to do that job for you. Maybe they have too much work on hand or whatever. You are very right, sir, and we are stating it here again, that the requirements that are provided by some agencies of government, you are to go to them first before you go to any other third-party service provider. But you're linking it to selective tendering. Selective tendering in itself is another thing. Selective tendering is just saying that where we are sure that the service is provided by 1, 2, 3, 4 persons or service providers are pretty much the same in terms of the quality and the price, we can say, let's just pick any 3 of them to represent the entire market. For instance, if you want to procure laptops, Whether you go to Chukudi at Otigba, or you go to Tunde, or you go to Samson, 3 of them in Otigba, the quality of what they will give you, the price difference will not be significant. So you can pick any 3 of them to represent the entire market spectrum. That is what we call selective tendering. There is another method that looks like this, but it's not the same. And I need to quickly differentiate. There's something we call, what's it now? Where you have the services that are specialized. We call it restrictive tendering. If you, for instance, if the state government, for instance, wants to build a bridge at any point, or some of our very large infrastructural projects, we may not need to open it to every and any construction company. For instance, the job being done at Odoyalaro, when the procurement process was done, we didn't have to open it to everybody by open competitive bidding, or say the Fourth Mainland Bridge. For such technical and heavy you may not, we don't have to open it to everybody. We do what we call selective, restrictive tendering, where you restrict to only those you know are good at it. So you pick like 3 or 4 to represent those people who are good at it. You don't have to make it open. So you see, it is similar to selective tendering, but they are not the same, and we need to be clear about them. These are just some of our technicalities in our procurement process. Thank you. Can we go on to the next question if it's clear?
Are you clear now, sir, Mr. Awi? Okay.